Hey guys, today we drift into a mystery that has never truly gone quiet. You're standing on the deck of an open sea, the air cool and metallic, the horizon blurred by a pale winter haze. Ahead of you, a sailing ship moves without purpose, its canvas slack, its wheel unattended. As you draw closer, something feels wrong in a way that words struggle to capture. There is no shout of greeting, no footsteps on wood, no smoke rising from a galley. Everything is here, except the people. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, feel free to leave a comment telling us where you are and what time it is as you listen tonight. Wherever you are, let the world slow down for a while. Soften your gaze. Let the hum of life around you fade, and gently drift with us into tonight's quiet exploration. You remain there, floating beside the ship, noticing how intact it looks. The hull is steady, the rigging mostly in order, the sails still capable of catching wind. This is not a wreck. This is not the aftermath of a storm that tore everything apart. It is something far more unsettling. A ship that should be alive with movement is instead holding its breath. You sense it immediately, the kind of silence that feels deliberate, almost careful, as though the ocean itself is keeping a secret. As you step aboard in your imagination, the wooden deck creaks softly beneath your weight. Barrels are secured. Ropes are coiled with discipline. Nothing suggests panic at first glance. And yet, you know what should be here and is not. No crew leaning against the rail. No captain scanning the horizon. No small signs of ordinary human presence. The absence presses in around you, heavy and patient. This ship would come to be remembered as one of the greatest maritime riddles ever recorded. Over time, people would call it ghost ship, not because of apparitions or legends whispered in fog, but because of something colder and more real. It was found adrift, fully seaworthy, with every soul gone. A complete vanishing, clean enough to defy instinct. You are not listening to a simple sea tale meant to frighten you. You are entering a layered puzzle, one built from fragments of evidence, human judgment, and the vast unpredictability of the ocean. In the age when this ship sailed, the sea was not romantic. It was work. It was risk measured in wood, rope, and trust in instruments that could fail without warning. Every voyage demanded discipline, routine, and calm decision-making under pressure. Ships like this one were floating systems, families, hierarchies, and livelihoods bound together by the need to survive long weeks of open water. When something went wrong, it usually left marks, damage, blood, broken timbers. But here, the clues are subtle, almost polite. You begin to sense why this story refuses to fade, because it does not scream at you. It whispers. It invites you to lean closer, to study the small things rather than the obvious. A door left open, an instrument out of place, a decision that makes sense only until you examine it more carefully. This is not a mystery of destruction. It is a mystery of choice. As the narrative unfolds, you will notice how easily certainty slips away. Each explanation seems reasonable until one detail resists it. A theory forms, then dissolves. Another steps forward, calm and convincing, only to leave questions behind. The ship becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the dangers of the sea, but the fragile psychology of people who must decide quickly when information is incomplete and fear is quiet but persuasive. You are standing at the threshold of that moment now, before conclusions, before speculation hardens into belief. At this point in the story, there is only the image of a vessel moving gently across the Atlantic, its purpose erased, its crew missing, its silence louder than any storm. You can almost imagine the last normal sounds it held. Footsteps, murmured conversations, the scrape of boots on deck. All of it gone, leaving behind a careful stillness. This mystery matters not because of what was found, but because of what was not. No bodies, no struggle, no obvious catastrophe, just a complete absence that demands explanation. And humans are uncomfortable with absence. We rush to fill it. We invent monsters, conspiracies, and cosmic interference. Or we lean on physics, chemistry, and probability, hoping logic can soothe unease. Yet even the most rational answers here remain incomplete, like a sentence that ends too soon. As you continue listening, you are not being asked to solve the puzzle. Not yet. Instead, you are being guided into its atmosphere. The slow realization that the ocean does not need violence to claim people. Sometimes it only needs doubt, a moment of misjudgment, a decision made with the best available information, which later becomes unknowable. The ship drifts on, steady and unbothered by human confusion. Wooden sail do not grieve. They do not question. They simply continue until acted upon. And somewhere between that indifference and our need for meaning, the legend of this vessel took shape, not as a horror story, but as a quiet challenge to certainty itself. You remain there beside it, listening to the soft wash of water against the hull, feeling the gentle sway beneath your feet. The sea is calm. The sky offers no warning. And yet, something irreversible has already happened. The kind of event that leaves no sharp edges, only unanswered space. That is where this journey begins, not with chaos, but with order left behind. You begin to sense that to understand what went wrong, you must first understand what this ship was meant to be. Long before it became a drifting question mark on the Atlantic, it started life as a practical object, shaped by hands that believed in order, balance, and routine. You imagine the sound of saws biting into timber, the slow rhythm of construction near a cold northern shoreline. This was not a vessel built for mystery. It was built for work. Originally launched under a different name, the ship emerged in the early 1860s from a coastal shipyard in what is now eastern Canada. The air that would have smelled of resin, salt, and fresh cut wood. Craftsmen worked with care, knowing that every joint and beam might one day stand between a crew and the open sea. The hull was wooden, strong but not excessive, designed for endurance rather than speed. Nothing about it suggested drama. It was meant to travel, to carry cargo, to return. At roughly 280 tons, the ship belonged to a class that was common for transatlantic trade at the time. Not massive, not small, just large enough to be profitable, just modest enough to be manageable by a tight-knit crew. Two masts rose from the deck, rigged in a way that balanced efficiency with control. Sail handling would have required coordination, not brute force. This kind of ship rewarded discipline. It trusted human judgment. You picture it during its early voyages, moving with purpose, its decks alive with routine sounds. The slap of rope against wood, the creak of timbers responding to swell, the quiet confidence that comes from repetition. Ships like this one crossed oceans not because they were fearless, but because fear had been normalized. Danger was expected, measured, accounted for. Yet even in its earliest years, this vessel carried a faint undercurrent of misfortune. Not dramatic disasters, but a series of small setbacks that never quite aligned into a clear pattern. Ownership changed hands. Repairs were needed sooner than expected. Delays followed it from port to port like a shadow that never fully caught up. None of this was unusual on its own. The sea tests everything eventually. Still, these early troubles added a subtle tension, a sense that the ship was slightly out of step with the luck of others. You sense how easily such details are dismissed at the time. Sailors are practical people. They do not linger on symbolism. A broken fitting is just a broken fitting. A rough voyage is simply weather. And so the ship continued on, renamed, reassigned, absorbing the identity given to it by those who worked aboard. It became, in the most ordinary way possible, part of the moving bloodstream of global trade. By the time it reached the period that would define it forever, the vessel was considered sound, inspected, certified, capable. There were no warnings etched into its hull, no secret weaknesses known only to a few. On paper, it was reliable, the kind of ship that disappears into shipping records, its movements logged, its arrivals unremarkable. And perhaps that is what makes what followed so unsettling. The mystery did not grow out of a broken thing. It grew out of something functional. You imagine standing on the deck during those earlier years, before the legend, before the silence. The ship responds predictably beneath your feet. It leans when it should lean. It holds steady when trimmed correctly. It does not feel cursed. It feels cooperative. And that cooperation is important, because it means that when something went wrong later, the cause was not obvious. The ship did not betray its crew in a sudden, violent way. It simply remained, doing what it always did. In maritime culture of the 19th century, reputation mattered. A vessel that repeatedly failed would be avoided. A ship that scared crews would struggle to find hands willing to sail it. This one did not reach that point. It was not shunned. It was not whispered about in taverns. Its history was uneven, but acceptable, ordinary enough to trust. And so, when preparations were made for another Atlantic crossing, there was no sense of stepping into a legend in waiting. The ship was viewed as a tool, a floating structure designed to carry goods across a wide, indifferent ocean. People trusted it because they had reason to. That trust would later become one of the most haunting aspects of the story. Not because it was misplaced, but because it was reasonable. As you hold this image in your mind, you begin to understand the emotional weight of what will come. If the ship had been fragile, its abandonment might make sense. If it had been notoriously unsafe, panic would feel justified. But this vessel stood in the middle ground, where confidence meets caution, where decisions are made not in chaos, but in quiet assessment. The ocean outside remains unchanged. Wind still fills sails. Currents still pull without intention. The ship, in its early life, was simply another participant in that vast system. And yet, every object carries a history forward, layer by layer, until one moment reframes everything that came before. You are still in the calm before that reframing, watching a ship that does not yet know it will one day be defined by absence. The deck beneath you feels solid. The horizon stretches wide and neutral. Nothing in this moment suggests mystery, and that is precisely why the story works its way so deeply into memory. Because it begins not with danger, but with normalcy, with a ship that should have completed its journeys and faded quietly into maritime archives. Instead, it waits, and soon, it will leave behind its role as a working vessel and enter something stranger. A space where history stops offering clear answers, and silence becomes the most enduring evidence of all. You drift forward in time, carried by the slow rhythm of tides and calendars, until you arrive at a quiet morning in early November. The harbor is calm, the kind of calm that makes departure feel routine rather than momentous. The ship rests at the dock, loaded and balanced, its presence ordinary enough to escape notice. This is how most journeys begin, without ceremony, without omen, without any sense that they will be remembered. The route is clear and familiar. A departure from the eastern coast of North America, a steady crossing of the Atlantic, and an arrival at a Mediterranean port weeks later. The cargo is practical, industrial, sealed into hundreds of barrels, and stacked methodically below deck. It is not precious. It is not volatile in any obvious way. It is simply work. You can almost feel the confidence that comes with repetition, the belief that if each day is handled correctly, the destination will arrive on its own. At the center of this routine stands a captain. You sense his presence not as a dramatic figure, but as a stabilizing one. A person shaped by experience rather than impulse. Someone who understands that authority at sea is not about command alone, but about predictability. He is known for caution, for preparation, for steady judgment. This is not a man who takes unnecessary risks. You can imagine him checking instruments with quiet focus, walking the deck with practiced steps, carrying responsibility without display. What sets this voyage apart, subtly but significantly, is not the route or the cargo. It is the people aboard. This is not a ship filled only with hired hands moving from port to port. This is a floating household as much as a workplace. Alongside the crew, there is family, a presence that changes the emotional atmosphere of the ship. You can feel it in the imagined sounds, softer voices, small routines woven into the larger ones, a sense of shared life rather than temporary arrangement. The crew itself is small, efficient, chosen for competence rather than excess. Each person has a defined role, a rhythm of duties that repeats with comforting regularity. At sea, predictability is safety. You rise, you work, you eat, you rest. Days blur into each other not because nothing happens, but because everything happens in the same measured way. This is how humans adapt to vastness. They create structure and live inside it. As the ship pulls away from the dock, there is no hesitation. Lines are cast off, sails catch the wind, and the shoreline begins to slip backward into memory. You imagine the final glance toward land. Not dramatic, not fearful, just attentive. A check to make sure everything is as it should be. The vessel responds smoothly, easing in emotion like something that has done this many times before. The early days of the voyage unfold without incident. Weather remains manageable. The sea offers long, gentle swells rather than sharp resistance. Navigation proceeds according to expectation. Each observation confirms what the crew already believes. This is a normal crossing, the kind that rewards patience rather than daring. Nothing demands explanation yet. Below deck, the cargo rests undisturbed. Barrels remain sealed. Air circulates as designed. The ship's structure holds steady against pressure and motion. Above, the deck sees its familiar choreography: sail adjustments, instrument checks, quiet conversations carried away by wind. Evenings bring softer light, cooler air, and the slow settling of activity. Nights are for listening, to water against hull, to rigging whispering overhead, to the steady breathing of a ship doing its job. There is something deeply human about this phase of the journey. It is a period where trust is reaffirmed again and again. Trust in construction, trust in skill, trust in routine. You can sense how this trust builds invisibly, becoming the foundation for decisions later on. When everything has worked so far, it is easy to believe it will continue to do so. Family life aboard introduces another layer of normalcy. Meals are shared not only out of necessity, but out of habit. Small moments accumulate. A glance exchanged, a familiar voice in an unfamiliar environment. These details matter because they anchor the voyage emotionally. This is not a ship rushing to meet a deadline at any cost. This is a space where care is present, where caution is not merely professional, but personal. As days pass, the ship moves farther from land, farther from immediate help, farther from easy correction. This is when decisions begin to carry more weight, even if they do not yet feel heavy. At sea, small judgments compound quietly. A course adjustment here, a maintenance choice there. None of them alarming on their own. All of them normal. All of them reasonable. You sense, even now, how thin the line is between routine and uncertainty. Not because something is wrong, but because something always could be. The ocean does not announce its intentions. It waits, and sailors learn to live without waiting, to read subtle signs, to interpret incomplete information with calm restraint. This voyage, at this point, contains no drama, and that absence is crucial, because when people later search for the moment where everything changed, they find no clear answer, no storm to blame, no conflict to point toward. Only a stretch of days that look like so many others. You remain with the ship as it continues west to east, cutting a quiet path across open water. The horizon remains wide and indifferent. The vessel moves forward with purpose, unaware that its most defining moment will not be an arrival, but a disappearance. For now, there's only motion, routine, and the deep human confidence that comes from things working as they should. You drift forward again, carried not by wind or sail this time, but by a widening gap in the story. Days pass without record, without voices, without explanation. Then, quietly, another ship enters the scene, moving through the same stretch of Atlantic water under a different set of expectations. The sea looks ordinary. The sky offers no warning. Nothing about this moment announces that history is about to bend. From a distance, you notice a vessel behaving strangely. Its movement is inconsistent, its course uncertain, as though no one is truly guiding it. At first, this does not trigger alarm. Ships can suffer minor damage. Crews can be busy below deck. But as hours pass, the pattern fails to correct itself. The ship neither signals nor responds. It drifts, adjusts, then drifts again like something undecided. You imagine the growing unease aboard the observing vessel. Sailors are trained to read motion the way others read language. A ship that does not behave as expected is saying something, even if it does not know what it is saying. The decision to approach is not dramatic. It is practical. Curiosity mixed with responsibility. At sea, ignoring an anomaly can mean abandoning someone in need. As the distance closes, recognition begins to form. The silhouette is familiar. The rigging, the hull shape, the proportions, all align with something known. There's an added layer of discomfort here, a quiet awareness that the ship ahead is not a stranger. It belongs to the same professional world, the same network of routes and schedules. This is not a nameless object. It is part of a shared system. When no response comes to hails, concern hardens into action. A small group prepares to board. This is not done lightly. Stepping onto another vessel at sea carries risk. You do not know what condition it is in. You do not know what you might find. Still, the sea does not allow hesitation forever. Lines are secured. A boat is lowered. The gap between the two hulls closes with a soft, uneasy rhythm. As you imagine stepping onto the deck, the first sensation is not fear, but confusion. The ship is intact. The sails are not shredded. The mast stands firm. Nothing suggests abandonment by force. And yet, there is no one there. No movement. No sound beyond the water and the wind. The silence feels curated, as though everything has been paused rather than destroyed. You move carefully, calling out, listening for any response. Your voice disappears into empty space. Cabins are checked. The galley shows signs of recent use. The living areas feel interrupted rather than concluded. This is not a ship that has been drifting for years. It is something else, something recently vacated. The emotional weight of this discovery is subtle but heavy. There is no moment of sudden realization, no sharp intake of breath. Instead, understanding arrives gradually, like a fog settling. Each step confirms what the last one suggested. No crew, no family, no explanation. The ship exists in a state that should not be possible. You begin to notice details that deepen the unease. Tools are where they should be. Personal belongings remain untouched. Nothing has been scavenged. Nothing has been looted. This is not the aftermath of violence or theft. It feels more like an interrupted routine, a day that stopped mid-sentence. Outside, the ocean remains calm. That calm is perhaps the most unsettling part. There is no storm to justify panic, no visible threat to explain urgency. And yet, everyone is gone. The mind struggles with this imbalance. Cause and effect refuse to align. As the boarding crew exchanges glances, unspoken questions pass between them. How long has the ship been like this? Why leave something so seaworthy behind? Why take nothing of value, nothing of comfort, nothing that suggests planning beyond the immediate moment. The answers do not present themselves. You sense the strange intimacy of this discovery. To board a ship is to enter someone else's life. To board and abandon one is to walk through the outline of lives suddenly erased. The air feels heavy not because of danger, but because of implication. Something happened here, something that did not leave fingerprints. The ship is identified, its name read, its origin understood. Recognition settles in fully now. This is not just an oddity. This is a disappearance. And as that realization spreads, so does a quiet certainty that whatever explanation exists will not be simple. The decision is made to secure the vessel and guide it toward port. There are rules for this, procedures shaped by centuries of maritime law. But procedure does not ease curiosity. As lines are attached and the ship is taken in tow, it feels less like a rescue and more like an escort, as though the vessel itself is being guided to testify. You remain there, standing on the deck, looking out at the same calm water that gave no warning and offers no answers. The ship moves once more with intention, not because someone has returned to it, but because others cannot leave it drifting alone. The mystery has not ended. It has only been found. You move deeper into the ship, and the quiet begins to take on texture. It is no longer just the absence of voices. It is the presence of things left exactly where they were last used. The kind of stillness that suggests interruption rather than conclusion. As you step below deck, the air feels closed in, faintly stale, but not rotten. Time has passed, but not enough to erase warmth entirely. The first impression is order, not perfection, but the lived-in order of a working vessel. Storage areas are intact. Supplies are secured. There is no sense of hurried stripping or desperate scavenging. This is not the aftermath of abandonment planned over days. It feels closer to a decision made quickly, perhaps reluctantly, under circumstances that felt temporary at the time. You notice how personal the space feels. Clothing remains folded or hung. Shoes sit where they were removed. Small items of daily life, cups, tools, utensils, rest in familiar places. Nothing of obvious value has been taken. Money remains untouched. Jewelry, where it exists, has not been gathered up or hidden. This is important. When humans plan to leave permanently, they take symbols of continuity. Here, continuity seems to have been assumed. As you explore further, small irregularities begin to surface. They do not shout for attention. They whisper. A piece of equipment is not secured as it should be. A mechanism normally fixed in place appears loosened, as though someone intended to return and finish a task. These details suggest urgency, but not chaos. Motion, but not violence. The ship itself tells a similar story. Structurally, it is sound. There are no signs of collision, no massive leaks, no catastrophic damage that would demand immediate evacuation. The hull holds. The deck is stable. The rigging remains largely functional. This was not a ship moments away from sinking. Below deck, the cargo sits almost entirely undisturbed. Barrels are still in place, stacked with care. Only a small number show signs of having been compromised, their contents no longer sealed. This detail matters, though its significance is not immediately clear. The rest of the cargo remains untouched, offering no evidence of theft or intentional destruction. Food supplies remain ample. Water stores are sufficient for months, not days. This is not a ship that ran out of resources. Starvation does not explain what you see, nor does thirst. The fundamentals of survival are still present, quietly waiting to be used by people who never returned. Then there are the more unsettling signs. A blade, normally kept close by its owner, has been left behind in a place that suggests oversight rather than choice. On the outer rail, marks appear, not extensive, not dramatic, but deliberate. They look like the result of force applied with intention, not accident. You cannot immediately say why they are there, only that they do not belong to normal wear. At the stern, a length of rope trails where it should not. It is long, purposeful, and suggests connection rather than abandonment. This is not the frayed end of something broken by storm. It looks placed, used, meant to hold something at a distance, not sever it. As these details accumulate, a pattern begins to form, though it remains incomplete. The ship was not overrun. It was not looted. It was not destroyed. Instead, it feels paused mid-response to a perceived threat. A situation serious enough to prompt action, but unclear enough that normal rules were bent rather than broken. You sense the psychological tension encoded into the space. The crew did not behave like people fleeing in terror. They behaved like people who expected to come back. That expectation hangs in the air, heavy and unresolved. Every untouched object reinforces it. Every neatly stored supply insists that this was not meant to be the end. The silence here is not empty. It is crowded with intention that never resolved. The ship feels like a sentence that stops before the final word, leaving meaning suspended. And as you stand there, absorbing these clues, one thing becomes increasingly clear. Whatever happened did not feel final to the people who lived it. This realization is perhaps the most disturbing of all, because it means the disappearance was not only mysterious, it was hopeful. And hope, when it goes unanswered, leaves a different kind of echo behind. You begin to separate what feels merely strange from what feels truly decisive. In a mystery like this, the smallest missing item can weigh more than the largest object left behind. You move through the ship again, slower now, letting your attention settle on the gaps, the places where something should be and isn't. Because absence can be a kind of handwriting, a message written in negative space. The most immediate, most telling absence is the ship's only lifeboat. It is not dangling half-lowered, not smashed against the hull, not tangled in lines. It is simply gone, and the moment you register that, the entire scene shifts. Because an empty ship can be explained in many ways, but a missing lifeboat points to a decision. It suggests that people did not vanish like mist. They left. They chose a smaller vessel over this larger one. They exchanged the solid certainty of a ship for the fragile promise of a boat on open water. You stand on the deck and picture that lifeboat cutting away from the hull, the motion of lowering it, the careful steps required so it doesn't smash against the side, the speed of hands on rope, the quiet urgency in voices trying not to sound afraid. You sense how coordinated it must have been. 10 people do not board a lifeboat by accident. They do it with intent. Then there is the compass, a simple object that becomes enormous once it fails. You notice damage, signs that something about navigation was compromised. At sea, direction is not a preference. It is safety. A compromised compass doesn't merely confuse a route. It erodes confidence, turning every mile into uncertainty. When your instruments begin to lie, even slightly, the ocean feels larger, more patient, more capable of swallowing you without effort. Another detail waits in a state of half-explanation, a pump system that appears dismantled, as though someone had started repairs and then stopped. You imagine the kind of problem that prompts such work. Water where it shouldn't be. A leak that is not catastrophic, but persistent. Something that demands attention because it changes the math of time. A ship can survive small leaks, but a crew must decide whether the rate of water is manageable, whether the pump can keep up, whether the situation is improving or quietly worsening. On a vessel like this, a pump is not just equipment. It is reassurance. The rhythmic sound of it working can calm a crew. The silence of it failing can do the opposite. If the pump was being repaired, it suggests the crew recognized a problem and attempted to solve it. But the fact that it was left unfinished suggests interruption, either by escalation of the situation or by a decision that the work no longer mattered. You move toward the cargo hold. One hatch stands open, wide enough to let air spill down into the dark. This would be unusual during a calm, normal voyage. Hatches are kept secured to protect cargo and to prevent water from entering. An open hatch implies someone wanted the hold to breathe. That alone hints at another kind of danger. Not water from outside, but something inside the ship that needed to escape. And yet, even here, the story refuses to become simple. The cargo itself appears mostly untouched. There is no sign of frantic unloading, no evidence that someone was searching for valuables, no chaos of toppled barrels. It is as if the hold was open for a reason that had nothing to do with theft or trade. A precaution, not a transaction. Then you consider what is missing beyond the lifeboat. Not large, obvious objects, but key tools of thought. A sextant, for example, the kind of instrument that helps turn stars into coordinates. A chronometer, the precise timekeeper that makes longitude possible. These are not casual items. They are central to navigation, guarded, maintained, relied upon. Their absence suggests they were taken intentionally, not left behind in panic, but carried away as though the crew expected to continue navigating after leaving the ship. This detail changes the emotional shape of the event. People fleeing terror often grab whatever is closest, whatever feels comforting. But taking specialized navigation tools suggests planning. It suggests the crew believe they might need to find their way, perhaps to land, perhaps to another ship, perhaps simply to survive until rescue. It suggests they did not think they were abandoning their fate to chance. They thought they were making a smarter move. And then, there's the ship's log, the official record, the steady heartbeat of a voyage written into ink. It is either missing or incomplete in a way that feels deliberate. A logbook is more than a diary. It is accountability. It is evidence. It tells you where the ship has been, what it has faced, what decisions were made. When it disappears, it is like losing the last clear voice of story that already struggles to speak. Yet another fragment remains, stubbornly ordinary. An earlier portion of the captain's personal record is still present, and it reads calmly, as though nothing is wrong. Entries are routine, weather observations, position notes. The tone is steady. There is no desperate warning, no foreshadowing of catastrophe, until suddenly, there is a gap, a stretch of time unaccounted for. You feel that gap like a missing step in a staircase. You can't see it, but you can't ignore it either. You step back and let these absences sit together in your mind. Lifeboat gone, navigation tools gone, compass damaged, pump dismantled, hatch open, cargo intact, money untouched, no bodies, no clear violence. These clues do not form a single straight line. They form a cluster, like stars that could become many different constellations depending on how you connect them. But one theme emerges softly, like a current beneath the surface. The crew appears to have believed the ship itself was unsafe in a way that felt immediate. Not unsafe because it was broken beyond saving, but unsafe because something about staying aboard felt riskier than leaving. And that belief, whether correct or not, is the hinge upon which the entire mystery turns. Because the ocean does not need to destroy a ship to end a voyage. Sometimes it only needs to convince you that staying is more dangerous than going. Sometimes the real threat is not the water or the wind, but the moment your confidence collapses and you begin to act from uncertainty instead of routine. You stand on the quiet deck again, feeling how intact everything looks and how unnatural it feels that the most important things are missing. Not the valuables, not the comforts, but the tools of survival. And in that contrast, you can almost hear the invisible decision being made, somewhere in the missing days. We'll leave for now, just for now, and we'll come back. You follow the ship's story as it is gently pulled toward land, no longer drifting freely, no longer silent by choice. The act of guiding it into port feels procedural, almost mundane, but beneath that calm surface, tension gathers. Because once the ship reaches harbor, its mystery will no longer belong only to the sea. It will be examined, questioned, and translated into legal language that struggles to hold uncertainty. When the ship arrives, attention turns from wonder to suspicion. Maritime law is practical, even skeptical. An abandoned vessel is not just a curiosity. It is a claim, a responsibility, and potentially a crime. Salvage rights depend on circumstance. Motive matters. And so, the calm discovery at sea becomes something else entirely. An event to be explained under scrutiny rather than speculation. An inquiry is convened. Officials move through the ship with measured steps, not unlike those first who boarded it at sea, but with a different purpose. They are not listening for life. They are listening for deception. Every detail becomes evidence. Every irregularity, a potential signal of wrongdoing. In a world governed by rules, mystery is uncomfortable. You sense the shift in atmosphere immediately. The ship is no longer just empty. It is suspect. The absence of people invites questions that turn toward those who found it. Why was this ship abandoned? How was it discovered? Could someone benefit from its disappearance? These questions are not personal accusations at first. They are structural. Law demands them. The fact that the discovering ship and its captain had prior familiarity with the missing vessel's leadership complicates matters. Familiarity invites doubt. Coincidence invites examination. The sea may accept uncertainty, but courts do not. They search for intent, even where none exists. As testimony unfolds, details are replayed again and again. The condition of a ship, the state of the cargo, the missing lifeboat, the untouched valuables. Each fact is weighed, not for emotional resonance, but for implication. The calmness of the scene becomes, paradoxically, suspicious. If no struggle occurred, then why leave? If the ship was sound, then why abandon it? The absence of chaos does not resolve doubt, it amplifies it. You notice how quickly human imagination shifts when placed under pressure. Where the sea invited curiosity, the courtroom invites narrative. Someone must have acted. Someone must have chosen. Someone must benefit or suffer blame. A mystery without a culprit feels unfinished, and so the inquiry presses harder, hoping to compress uncertainty into explanation. Yet evidence refuses to cooperate. No signs of violence emerge. No hidden damage reveals itself. The cargo, though valuable, shows no signs of manipulation. The theory of foul play struggles to take shape. It remains possible, but unsupported. And possibility without proof is a fragile thing in a formal investigation. As proceedings continue, the tone grows increasingly restrained. Accusations soften into doubts. Doubts linger without direction. The ship itself offers no testimony beyond its condition. Wood and rope cannot explain intention. Silence becomes the dominant witness. In the end, a conclusion is reached not because answers have been found, but because the process demands closure. The official language is careful, almost evasive. The disappearance is attributed to causes that cannot be determined. It is a verdict that satisfies procedure, but not curiosity. A line drawn under a question mark. Consequences still follow. Rewards are adjusted. Confidence is withheld. The outcome reflects discomfort rather than certainty. It acknowledges that something unusual occurred, while admitting that its nature remains beyond reach. In this way, the inquiry mirrors the sea itself, structured, impartial, and ultimately indifferent to human desire for clarity. You sense the quiet frustration embedded in this resolution. The law has done what it can, and no more. The ship has been returned, examined, judged, and released back into history without a verdict that feels complete. The people who vanished remain unreachable, their reasons sealed within the gap between logic and experience. As the ship's story leaves the courtroom, it does not resolve. It transforms. It becomes something that no longer belongs solely to records and rulings. It enters the space of speculation, where explanations multiply rather than converge. And in doing so, it begins its second life, not as a working vessel, but as a question that refuses to settle. You remain with that question now, feeling how it lingers even after official words have been spoken. Because sometimes, the most honest conclusion is not an answer, but an admission that the ocean does not always return what it takes, and that some decisions vanish with those who make them. You step away from the courtroom and into a quieter space, the place where reasoning tries to settle the mind. Here, the imagination is guided not by fear or suspicion, but by physics, chemistry, and the limits of human judgment under stress. This is where explanations begin to feel almost comforting, because they suggest that what happened followed rules, even if those rules were misunderstood at the time. One possibility rises gently to the surface. The sea itself may have spoken suddenly, without warning. You imagine a column of water twisting upward from the surface, brief but violent, a force that does not need to last long to change perception. Such events are rare, but they are real. To those who encounter them unexpectedly, they can feel apocalyptic. A ship does not need to be struck directly to be frightened by one. The sight alone, combined with unfamiliar motion beneath the hull, could convince a crew that something unseen is about to tear them apart. Another natural force suggests itself more quietly, but with greater persistence. The cargo carried below deck was not inert in the way stone or grain would have been. Industrial alcohol behaves differently. It evaporates. It accumulates. In enclosed spaces, its fumes can become invisible threats, heavier than air, waiting patiently. You imagine barrels that were not perfectly sealed, allowing vapor to seep out day after day. The crew may not have noticed at first. Smell dulls. Routine numbs attention. Then, perhaps, something small happened. A sound. A pressure release. A sudden rush of air as a hatch was opened. Alcohol vapor does not need flame to frighten. It only needs ignition. A spark for metal. A tool striking wood. A moment of routine work turning abruptly into a flash of force. Not a devastating explosion, but enough to convince anyone below deck that something far worse might follow. You picture the aftermath. The hold aired out. No sustained fire. No structural damage. Just a memory of shock. Sudden, loud, and deeply unsettling. In such moments, the mind leaps ahead of evidence. What if the rest of the cargo ignites? What if the ship becomes a floating trap? The rational choice might feel like distance. Air, space, safety away from the hull. This theory gains weight when you remember the open hatch, the marks along the rail, the rope trailing behind the ship. They begin to align into a quiet sequence. Ventilation attempted. Equipment moved. A lifeboat lowered not as an escape, but as a precaution. A rope securing it to the ship, keeping it close while danger is assessed. This is not panic. This is cautious retreat. You imagine the crew drifting alongside their own ship, watching it carefully, listening for signs of fire or explosion. They do not row away. They wait. The ship remains intact. The sea is calm. Time passes, and then something goes wrong. Not aboard the ship, but between ship and boat. A rope frays. A knot slips. A swell rises unexpectedly. The distance widens, slowly at first, then irrevocably. Without navigation tools, without the stability of the larger vessel, the small boat becomes vulnerable in a way the ship never was. The irony is sharp and quiet. In trying to avoid a perceived threat, the crew may have placed themselves in a far more dangerous situation. The ship, now safe again, drifts on. The people, exposed and unprotected, do not. Another explanation rests less on sudden events and more on cumulative error. Navigation instruments are trusted deeply, often more than intuition. If a compass begins to fail, it does not announce itself. It lies gently, Bearings drift. Positions feel plausible but wrong. You imagine the crew believing they are closer to land than they truly are. You imagine the comfort that belief brings. Land means options. Land means safety. Then a small problem emerges. Water in the hold. A pump under strain. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to force a decision. If land is near, abandoning ship temporarily might feel reasonable. If rescue seems likely, the lifeboat feels sufficient. The danger lies not in the action itself, but in the assumption supporting it. At sea, error compounds quietly. A few miles misjudged become dozens. Time stretches. Weather shifts. A decision that makes sense at noon feels different by nightfall. And the ocean does not correct mistaken confidence. It simply waits. These explanations share something important. They do not rely on malice or madness. They rely on human reasoning under incomplete information, on the tendency to act decisively when uncertainty becomes uncomfortable, on the belief that doing something feels safer than waiting, even when waiting might be wiser. You feel how these theories soften the story without dissolving it. They offer shape without closure. They suggest that what happened was not extraordinary in intent, only in outcome. That ordinary caution, paired with rare circumstance, can produce irreversible loss. As you let these possibilities settle, the ship becomes less of a ghost and more of a witness. It did not betray its crew. It simply outlasted them. And in doing so, it left behind a lesson written not in wreckage, but in restraint. A reminder that the sea does not always punish recklessness. Sometimes, it punishes hesitation born from fear. The explanations remain plausible, but not provable. They drift alongside the mystery rather than replacing it. And perhaps that is enough for now. Because understanding how something could happen is not the same as knowing that it did. The space between those two truths is where the ship continues to sail, quietly, endlessly, through human imagination. As reason begins to loosen its grip, the mind drifts naturally towards stranger shores. When evidence refuses to settle into certainty, imagination steps forward, not loudly, but with a quiet confidence of its own. You feel this shift as a soft change in temperature, a movement away from measured explanations and into something more elusive. Here, the rules feel less rigid. Possibility stretches wider. The ocean becomes not just a physical space, but a stage for the unknown. You imagine the deep beneath the ship, vast and layered, home to creatures that rarely brush the surface of human awareness. For centuries, sailors spoke of enormous forms rising from below, tentacles curling over rails, shadows moving against hulls. In this telling, the ship is not abandoned because of fear alone, but because of encounter, a presence that did not belong to weather or machinery, something large enough to inspire instinctive retreat. And yet, when you return to the ship itself, the idea begins to soften. There are no crushed timbers, no shattered rails, no signs of struggle against a living force. The ship does not bear the scars such an encounter would likely leave behind. The story persists not because of evidence, but because of the sea's long relationship with myth. Humans have always filled the unknown with forms, because forms feel easier to face than emptiness. Another idea drifts in more quietly, carrying a different kind of tension. What if the danger came not from below or beyond, but from within? A conflict among those aboard, a disagreement that escalated, a decision challenged. You imagine raised voices, hurried movements, a breakdown in trust. Yet again, the ship resists the story. There are no signs of violence, no blood, no broken order that suggests struggle. The personal belongings remain untouched, undisturbed by panic or revenge. The absence of evidence does not erase the idea entirely. It lingers because human conflict feels familiar, but familiarity alone does not make a thing true. And here, familiarity meets resistance at every turn. Then there is the suggestion of an unseen force rising from the ocean itself. Not a creature, but a phenomenon. Gas trapped beneath the seabed, released suddenly into the water, altering buoyancy, turning solid support into something unstable. In such moments, ships can feel as though they are sinking without damage, swallowed by a sea that has lost its density. Panic would be understandable. Retreat might feel rational. But once again, the ship remains afloat, steady, unaffected. No sign that the water beneath it betrayed its structure. No lingering disturbance in the surrounding sea. The idea floats for a moment, then drifts away, unsupported by what was found. And then, inevitably, the mystery widens beyond the natural world entirely. Some speak of visitors not bound by ocean or wind, of lights in the sky, of moments where time bends, where space behaves unpredictably. You imagine the crew witnessing something inexplicable, an event that disrupts not just safety, but understanding itself. In such a moment, leaving might feel less like escape and more like instinctive response to the incomprehensible. These ideas persist not because they solve the puzzle, but because the puzzle feels incomplete without them. When logic reaches its edge, the imagination steps beyond it. This is not a flaw. It is a human reflex. We do not like empty spaces in our stories. We fill them, gently, with wonder or fear. There's also the quieter, more abstract notion that the ship simply passed through a place where certainty thins. A region of ocean burdened with coincidence, where navigation falters, judgment slips, and small errors become fatal. Not a triangle or a curse, but a reminder that the sea does not behave the same way everywhere, and neither do people. As you sit with these possibilities, you notice something important. None of them feel entirely satisfying. They intrigue, but they do not settle. They decorate the mystery rather than resolve it. And perhaps that is their purpose. They keep the story alive by refusing to let it harden into a single explanation. The ship, in this light, becomes less a victim of something specific and more a symbol of uncertainty itself. It carries the weight of unanswered questions not because it hides truth, but because truth never fully boarded it in the first place. You feel the pace slow here, the mind easing into a gentle rhythm. The wild ideas no longer rush forward. They drift like debris on calm water, catching light briefly before moving on. What remains is not belief, but curiosity, a soft openness to not knowing. And in that openness, the mystery becomes less threatening. It does not demand resolution. It invites contemplation. The ship continues to exist not as proof of the impossible, but as a quiet reminder that the world is larger than our explanations, and that sometimes the most honest response is to listen rather than conclude. Time moves on, and with it comes distance, not just in years, but in perspective. As decades pass, the urgency of explanation softens, replaced by patience and new tools of understanding. You sense how the mystery begins to be approached differently now, not as a problem to be solved quickly, but as a case study to be revisited slowly, with methods unavailable to those who first encountered it. Modern minds return to the ship armed with chemistry, physics, and a calmer relationship with uncertainty. The cargo once listed as ordinary is examined more carefully. Industrial alcohol, when studied in controlled conditions, reveals behaviors that align unsettlingly well with what was found aboard. Vapors can accumulate invisibly. Pressure can build without warning. A brief ignition can occur without leaving burn marks or structural damage. Not an explosion that destroys, but one that convinces. You imagine researchers recreating this environment, watching how flame can rush through air and vanish, leaving little trace behind. the kind of event that startles rather than consumes. In this light, earlier clues regain clarity. The open hatch, the unfinished repairs, the rope trailing behind the ship. These are not random details. They feel coordinated, like steps taken by people trying to manage risk rather than escape it. At the same time, historians sift through records with a gentler hand, not to accuse, but to understand mindset. They examine shipping practices of the era, the trust placed in instruments, the caution expected of those responsible for lives at sea. They consider how isolation amplifies uncertainty, how responsibility can weigh heavier than fear. When you are accountable not just for yourself, but for others, especially those close to you, the threshold for action lowers. Safety becomes emotional, not just logical. You sense how this reframing shifts blame away from drama and toward psychology. Decisions made at sea are rarely clean. They unfold in fragments, shaped by incomplete data and human instinct. A choice that seems irrational from shore may feel inevitable when surrounded by water and silence. Explorers and writers attempt to trace the ship's later fate, searching for physical remains that might offer closure. Expeditions scan the ocean floor, consult old maps, follow rumors of wreckage. Each effort carries hope, but also restraint. Even if remains were found, they might answer very little. Wood decays. Evidence dissolves. The sea keeps what it takes. Over time, the story becomes less about the final moments and more about what it teaches. It enters training manuals, lectures, and quiet discussions among those who study risk, not as a warning about monsters or curses, but as a lesson in perception, about how danger does not need to be real to be powerful, about how belief can move people more decisively than fact. You feel the tone shift here, becoming less investigative and more reflective. The mystery is no longer treated as a failure to solve, but as an opportunity to understand how humans respond when certainty erodes. The ship becomes a case where survival instincts may have worked against survival itself. And yet, even now, nothing is sealed. No final document emerges. No definitive conclusion settles the question. Science offers plausibility, not proof. History provides context, not closure. Together, they circle the truth without capturing it. As you sit with this, you realize how rare that is. In a world eager for answers, this story resists completion. It remains open, breathable, unfinished. And perhaps that is why it endures. Not because it defies explanation, but because it reveals how explanation itself has limits. You let that thought drift, feeling the weight of time soften the sharp edges of curiosity. The ship no longer feels like a challenge to be conquered, but like a quiet companion to human uncertainty, something to think with rather than solve. You begin to notice how the story slips gently out of history and into memory, not the personal kind, but the shared memory of culture, the place where facts soften into symbols and events become metaphors. Here, the ship no longer belongs only to the sea or to records. It belongs to imagination, where it is reshaped and retold, each version carrying the same quiet unease. Writers are among the first to reach for it. They sense the narrative potential immediately, not because it is dramatic, but because it is restrained. A ship without people, a question without an answer. Stories emerge that do not add much, but subtly rearrange what is already there. A door left ajar becomes ominous. A meal interrupted becomes symbolic. Small details are stretched just enough to feel intentional, even if they never were. These retellings move slowly, spreading through books and magazines, through bedtime conversations and classroom curiosities. The ship becomes shorthand for abandonment, for interruption, for something that should be alive but is not. Its name begins to function less as a proper noun and more as a mood. Visual media follows. On screens, the ship appears wreathed in mist, its decks perpetually damp, its sails always half-filled. Silence is emphasized. Footsteps echo where no one walks. The ocean is framed as endless, patient, watching. These portrayals do not claim accuracy. They are not meant to. They exist to preserve feeling rather than fact. You sense how the mystery adapts to each era. In times fascinated by the supernatural, the ship becomes a vessel of haunting. In times focused on psychology, it becomes a study in fear and decision-making. In technological ages, it is framed as a system failure, a case where human trust in machines outpaced understanding. The core remains the same, only the lens changes. Even language absorbs the story. The ship's name begins to describe places left inexplicably empty. An office with lights on but no people. A house where everything is in place, yet no one answers the door. The phrase carries unease without explanation. It suggests that absence itself can be suspicious, that silence can feel louder than noise. You feel how this cultural afterlife both preserves and distorts the original event. Details are added that were never recorded. Timelines blur. Certainty creeps in where none existed. And yet, this is not corruption so much as transformation. Stories that survive do so because they can be reshaped without breaking. What remains consistent is the emotional center. The discomfort does not come from horror, but from restraint. There are no screams in this story, no final message, no visible ending. That absence invites participation. Each listener fills the gap differently, bringing their own fears, assumptions, and hopes into the space left behind. In this way, the ship becomes collaborative. Its mystery is co-authored by everyone who encounters it. Each retelling adds a layer, not of truth, but of meaning. And meaning, unlike evidence, does not need to be proven to be felt. You notice how often this story appears in moments meant to be quiet, late at night, during reflective conversations, in spaces where the mind is already drifting. It suits those moments because it does not demand resolution. It allows the listener to rest inside uncertainty rather than push against it. As the story settles deeper into culture, it becomes less about what happened and more about what it represents. The fragility of assumption, the danger of incomplete information, the way ordinary decisions can echo far beyond their moment. These themes persist because they are timeless. The sea changes. Technology changes. Human uncertainty does not. You feel the ship drifting now not across water, but across imagination. It moves through books, screens, and quiet thoughts, carrying no crew, no cargo, only a question that remains light enough to float. And as it does, it continues to invite the same response it always has. Not fear, but contemplation. You widen your view now, letting the story of this ship settle into a broader ocean of similar echoes. Once you notice it, you realize it is not alone. History holds other vessels that slipped into silence, discovered intact yet emptied of human presence. And as you place them side by side in your thoughts, patterns begin to emerge. Not answers, but familiar shapes. One such ship appears years later along another stretch of coast. When it is found, meals sit half-eaten, personal items remain in place, and the crew is gone without explanation. The scene feels unsettlingly familiar. Once again, there is no storm frozen into the wreckage, no clear violence etched into wood or steel. Just interruption, as though time paused and forgot to resume. The resemblance does not solve anything, but it softens the sense of isolation around the original mystery. It suggests this is not an anomaly, but a rare outcome of recurring conditions. Another vessel drifts through colder waters, abandoned not because of disappearance, but because of necessity. Ice traps it. Crews leave it behind, believing it will be crushed, only to have it reappear years later, still afloat, still wandering. This ship becomes a reminder that abandonment does not always mean loss. and that the sea does not always behave according to expectation. Objects left behind can persist far longer than the people who made decisions about them. As you compare these stories, subtle distinctions matter. Some ships show clear signs of haste: overturned furniture, scattered tools, evidence of panic. Others are stripped of valuables, pointing toward survival or theft. But the ship you began with remains unique in its restraint. Nothing essential for long-term survival aboard was missing. Nothing suggested chaos. It stand apart not because it was more dramatic, but because it was calmer. This calm is perhaps the most unsettling common thread. Across different oceans and eras, the ships that trouble memory most are not the ones destroyed, but the ones left behind intact. They confront you with a question that has no physical anchor. Why leave safety when it still exists? Why choose uncertainty over structure? The comparison reveals something quietly important. In many cases, the sea does not remove people from ships. People remove themselves, sometimes wisely, sometimes not. And the difference between those outcomes is not always visible in hindsight. The same action, abandoning a vessel, can lead to rescue in one case and disappearance in another. The line between those results is thin and invisible. You feel the rhythm of repetition here, the way history seems to test similar decisions under slightly different conditions. Each time, the variables shift just enough to change the outcome. Weather, distance from land, equipment, timing, psychology. None of these alone determine fate. Together, they create a fragile balance. By placing these ships side by side, the original mystery becomes less singular and more instructive. It stops being a question of what went wrong and becomes a meditation on when leaving feels right, on how humans assess risk when the environment offers no feedback, on how trust and perception can override trust and evidence. The ship at the center of your attention remains the most enigmatic because it resists categorization. It does not fit neatly into patterns of disaster or survival. It occupies the narrow space between, and in doing so, it reveals how uncomfortable that space is for the human mind. As you let these parallels drift through your thoughts, the story begins to feel less like an outlier and more like a quiet refrain, a reminder repeated across decades and oceans, that absence does not always signal violence, and that calm conditions do not guarantee safe choices. The sea holds many ships. Most are forgotten. A few become lessons, and a rare handful become symbols. Not because they're unique in circumstance, but because they capture something essential about uncertainty itself. You return again to the unanswered spaces, but now they feel quieter, less demanding. After all the theories, comparisons, and reflections, what remains is not confusion, but a series of gentle questions that refuse to fade. They do not shout. They rest in the background, like the sound of water against wood, steady and persistent. The first question forms almost on its own. Why would experienced sailors, people who had crossed open water many times before, decide to leave a ship that was still floating, still stocked, still capable of carrying them onward? From a distance, the choice feels illogical. But you know how different decisions feel when made inside uncertainty rather than after it. At sea, confidence is not abstract. It is physical. When that confidence cracks, even slightly, it can reshape every calculation. You imagine standing on the deck as they did, feeling the ship beneath your feet, listening for sounds that should not be there, watching instruments that no longer inspire trust. Fear does not need to be loud to be persuasive. It only needs to introduce doubt. And doubt, once present, can make even solid ground feel temporary. Another question follows closely behind. What was the crew responding to, a real danger or the perception of one? The difference matters less in the moment than it does later. The body reacts the same way either way. Adrenaline does not wait for confirmation. It acts on belief. And belief shaped by incomplete information, can feel as compelling as truth. Then there is the question of time. How long did they hesitate before acting? Was the decision sudden, or did it build slowly over hours, perhaps days? You picture quiet discussions, glances exchanged, the unspoken tension of responsibility. When lives depend on your judgment, waiting can feel like negligence, acting can feel like care, and sometimes the line between those two is invisible. The most haunting question may be the simplest. What happened after they left the ship? The sea does not record small boats the way it records large ones. A lifeboat leaves little trace. It can drift beyond sight quickly, especially if tethered hopes are cut short by weather or chance. The absence of evidence here is not surprising. It is expected, and yet, it leaves a hollow space where imagination lingers. You notice how this absence invites empathy rather than fear. It is easy to imagine exhaustion setting in, thirst, exposure, a horizon that never quite resolves into land or sail. Not a dramatic end, but a quiet one, the kind that fades without witnesses, the kind the sea absorbs without comment. And then there is the question that circles all the others. If they had stayed, would the outcome have been different? The ship itself suggests yes. It survived. It drifted. It waited. But that knowledge belongs to hindsight. At the moment of decision, survival is not a guarantee offered by staying or leaving. It is a probability, weighed imperfectly. These questions remain unanswered not because they are unimportant, but because they are human. They sit at the intersection of reason and instinct, where clarity is rare. The ship becomes a container for them, holding uncertainty without resolving it. As you sit with these thoughts, you feel how the mystery shifts once more. It is no longer about what the sea did, but about what people believed it might do. About how fragile certainty becomes when removed from land. About how even experience does not eliminate doubt. It only changes its shape. The unanswered questions do not weaken the story. They deepen it. They turn it inward, away from spectacle and toward reflection. And in that reflection, the ship feels closer, not farther away. Less like an object of curiosity, and more like a quiet companion to the parts of you that understand how difficult it is to choose when no option feels safe. You feel the story beginning to gather itself, not toward resolution, but toward meaning. After all the details, all the theories, all the comparisons and unanswered questions, what remains is a quieter understanding of why this mystery endures. It is not because the event was loud or violent. It is because it was restrained, because it left just enough behind to invite thought, and just enough missing to prevent certainty. You reflect on how the ship exists now, suspended between fact and imagination. It is neither fully explained nor fully unknowable. It occupies a middle space that feels deeply human. In that space, the ocean is not an enemy, and people are not foolish. They are simply navigating uncertainty with limited information, doing what humans have always done, choosing the option that feels safest in the moment. The story draws its power from this balance. If everything had been destroyed, grief would have replaced mystery. If everything had been explained, curiosity would have faded. Instead, the ship offers a puzzle with soft edges. It allows you to circle it without cutting yourself on conclusions. You sense how this mirrors something familiar. Life itself rarely provides clean answers. Decisions are made without knowing their outcomes. Actions are judged later with information that was never available at the time. The ship becomes a quiet symbol of that condition, a reminder that survival is not always about strength or intelligence, but about perception and timing. The ocean, in this telling, is not cruel. It is indifferent. It does not punish mistakes or reward caution. It simply continues. And that indifference is what makes human choice so heavy. Without feedback, every decision feels amplified. Staying can feel reckless. Leaving can feel responsible. Only later does one appear wiser than the other. You notice how the mystery gently resists being solved, because solving it would reduce it to mechanics alone. But the story is not only about mechanics. It is about fear managed carefully, about hope placed in small boats, about the belief that distance from danger is the same as safety. These are not flaws. They are instincts. As the ship drifts further into memory, it stops asking to be explained and starts asking to be considered. What would you have done standing on that deck, hearing unfamiliar sounds, watching instruments behave strangely? Would you trust the ship you cannot fully understand, or the action that feels immediate and decisive? The question is uncomfortable because there is no clearly correct answer, and perhaps that is why the mystery remains compelling. It does not allow you to sit above it, analyzing from safety. It invites you aboard. It asks you to feel the weight of responsibility, the pull of caution, the fear of waiting too long. It turns history into a mirror rather than a spectacle. You let the story slow now, its edges softening. The ship no longer feels haunted. It feels thoughtful, a vessel not of ghosts, but of hesitation and care. A reminder that sometimes the most enduring mysteries are not about what we cannot see, but about what we choose when seeing becomes difficult. The ocean stretches on, vast and quiet, holding no judgment. And within that quiet, the ship continues to drift, not demanding answers, only offering space to think, to wonder, and to rest inside the uncertainty without needing to resolve it. You arrive at the final stretch of the story, not at an ending, but at a place where everything gently comes to rest. By now, the ship feels less like an object drifting on water, and more like a quiet presence drifting through thought. It has carried you across facts and theories, through fear and logic, and set you down somewhere calmer than where you began. You notice how the mystery no longer presses for resolution. Instead, it breathes. It allows space. The ship's silence, once unsettling, now feels almost deliberate, as if it has chosen not to speak because speaking would narrow what it represents. Answers would shrink it. Uncertainty lets it remain wide. What lingers most is not the disappearance itself, but the moment before it. The unseen pause when people weighed their options in low voices, surrounded by water and responsibility. That pause is the heart of the story. Not the lifeboat drifting away, not the ship found intact, but the instant when staying and leaving felt equally risky, and a choice had to be made anyway. You realize how rarely history preserves that moment. Records capture outcomes, not hesitation. They show what happened, not how it felt. This ship preserves feeling better than fact. It holds the texture of doubt, the softness of fear that does not announce itself, the care that can lead people away from safety rather than toward it. In this way, the ship becomes strangely gentle. It does not accuse. It does not warn. It simply reflects. It shows how even experience cannot eliminate uncertainty, and how responsibility can make decisions heavier instead of clearer. It reminds you that survival is not always about endurance. Sometimes it is about interpretation. The ocean, too, takes on a quieter role here. It is not a villain. It does not roar or strike. It listens. It allows human stories to unfold within it without interference. And when those stories end abruptly, it does not explain itself. It simply continues, carrying ships that move and ships that wait. As you think of the people who vanished, your thoughts soften. There is no need to imagine terror or chaos. It is enough to imagine care, concern, a desire to do the right thing with the information available. Their absence becomes less frightening when viewed through that lens. It becomes human. The ship itself, preserved and remembered, becomes a kind of punctuation mark in maritime history. Not an exclamation point, but an ellipsis. 3 quiet dots that suggest continuation rather than conclusion. It invites each generation to pause, to reflect, and to accept that not every story is meant to be closed. You feel the narrative slow further now, easing into stillness. The details blur slightly at the edges, losing sharpness, becoming more atmospheric than precise. The ship drifts again, but this time through memory rather than water. It carries no cargo now, only a feeling, calm, unresolved, and oddly comforting. And as it drifts, it leaves you with something subtle but lasting. An understanding that mystery does not always need to be solved to be meaningful. Sometimes, it only needs to be held gently, like the quiet moment before sleep, when questions fade and certainty is no longer required. Now, let the images loosen their hold. The ship fades into the distance, its outline soft against the dark water, its sails barely catching the light. The ocean smooths itself out, becoming less a place and more a rhythm. Slow, repetitive, steady. Nothing is urgent here. Nothing needs attention. Your breathing slows without instruction. Thoughts stretch out, becoming longer, less defined. The unanswered questions no longer ask for effort. They rest, like objects placed gently on a shelf, waiting without expectation. The sea grows quieter still. The ship becomes smaller, then indistinct, then part of the horizon itself. What remains is not mystery, but calm. A sense that some stories are meant to drift alongside us, not to be chased or captured, but simply accompanied. You can let go now. The weight of explanation slips away. There is nothing left to analyze, nothing left to decide. Only the soft awareness of stillness, of time moving without demand. Wherever you are, allow your body to sink into that calm. Let the edges of thought blur. Let the world dim gently, without force, without effort. The ocean carries the ship out of sight. The night settles in, and you drift easily with it, untroubled, unhurried, at rest.